Welcome once again to Culinary Thing, and what I've got is I look around here, the blender's empty, I've got some paper towels here from my cook's dishes, and the stove is empty, and over here there's some things, a knife is on the implement, the cook's implement lay. Here's a blender, a portion of the sink, drain condition, bowls are out, and over here I've got what's in me my blender, and in the kitchen, in the sink here, when you turn on this light, what I have there is my 1 quart pan there with the 2 cup cook bowl. And what does this present, and what is going on this day? And what I know is occurring is that there's something cooking up in the oven at 350 degrees. And what that is, it's a zucchini bread that I'm cooking up this day. And what I started off with was 2 cups, and there's something on the floor in there. I don't know what it is. Let's see what that is. What is that? It's a sunflower seed. So anyway, what I was cooking up, and there might be some sesame seeds there. I'll be cleaning that up. What I had in the condition I have is I had what's going to be 2 cups and rough chopped celery, so it'll be alright in the blender condition at a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch chunk. And then I added to that what was said to be a portion raisin, a proportion I thought might be just about right, which is a 7 tablespoons for that 2 cup portion zucchini, because I thought to myself, if I could have pumpkin pie filling, then I could have zucchini pie filling. And so I thought I'd start off with that zucchini and the raisin. I said, I can make some bread out of this. I added was a 1/4 cup in sesame seed, and then after that I cooked that all up and I blended it into a puree. And that's what this blender, empty blender, that's what's left over after the puree and the zucchini and the raisins. And then I stirred up what's going to be 2 cups in unenhanced flour. And to that I add 1 tablespoon in what was said to be baking powder. I stirred that flour and the baking powder together. And then I gently stirred that into what was said to be the pureed zucchini, raisin, and sesame seed, and I did that in what's going to be that 4-cup bowl that's in the back there. And then what I did was I spooned that stir, and it was about a batter consistency. And what was said to be an 11-cup Simply Storage container. Those Simply Storage containers, they can go from oven to the counter, and they can go from the counter to the refrigerator. A slow change temperature can have them go from cold to hot, and from hot to cold. And they can go in the oven up to, I think, 350 degrees. I think the 11-cup ones will maybe a little questionable at 500 degrees. You might break the thing if you put it in the oven at 500 degrees. At 350 degree without the top on, you have to leave the top off. That's why the top's over there. It's not being cooked up. And it'll be alright, I think, at 350 degrees. Before I put the batter in, I used 1/2 a teaspoon of peanut oil just to coat the pan so the bread wouldn't stick to it as much as it would otherwise. And so presently what's happening is it's cooking up in that oven, and we can turn on this light here. Here's the oven light. We can turn that on, and we can take a look at it. I just turned it off, I think, instead of on. There, now it's on. And there it is, it's cooking up in the oven. It's rising, however it's rising. And that's my zucchini bread that I'm cooking up in that pan. That pan actually was in the freezer, and the oven, as it was non-preheated. It was a non-preheated oven, and I knew that in that condition that Simply Storage container would slowly heat up to its baking temperature at 500 degrees. Well, I know that based on previous breads that I've cooked up, I know that 15 minutes for a biscuit is about right. And those biscuits, they have the air around them in the pan, all surfaces. And when you cook up a bread that's in a pan, well, there's a so-called one instanton surface that is not there in the smaller portion. And so it takes longer to heat up the bread and have it cook because it's a larger volume than if you're cooking up a biscuit. And so in that condition, if you're cooking up a muffin in a 1 cup simply storage container, or 1 cup, some people would say a casserole dish, that takes longer than if it's just 3 tablespoons in a biscuit that's put on a baking sheet. And sometimes when you get to a cake portion in a larger pan, then it's multiple factors long to cook the volume so that batter consistency rises and it gets all cooked up. The moisture leaves the batter so that it becomes that dense and not so dense, depending on the condition you have your bread making, to be edible, so it's not just a goo that you're spooning into your mouth. And so I've had that condition, and it does take time to cook up bread in a larger pan. And somewhere between 15 minutes, I think, and 40 minutes, this bread's going to be done. And we know that, well, maybe some people know. I think I've cooked something up in the oven. And it took maybe, as it was, 60 minutes to actually cook up. And so I know that these larger pan conditions are much more than the flatbread. As some people know, the flatbread can be cooked up in about 8 minutes, and biscuit maybe 12 to 15. When you start cooking something up in a large pan and baking it, it takes a lot longer. So I'm looking for somewhere between 15 minutes and 40 minutes, but I know if it wasn't done then maybe be done in 45 and maybe be done in 50, if not 60 minutes. But the thing that I do know to do is to check that bread about every 5 minutes, and I'm looking for the top of the bread to be lightly golden brown. I'm not looking for the sides to be burnt, and I'm not looking for that dark brown color on the side. And that's why I like the glass pan that I cook that bread, so I can see the sides and I can see if they're too dark, because if they're too dark, then it's got to come out of the oven immediately, because that's something that is said to be overcooked. So let's go ahead and take a look at this bread again, and we'll see what we've got here. It's cooking up, and one way that one can tell if a cake is done is this type of knife that occurs here. You just poke it in the center, and if it comes up with a liquid on it, if there's some batter left on it, then it's definitely not said to be done enough. It needs to be cooked up some more. And that's just a simple test in baking bread cake. You put that knife in the center, you pull it out. If it's got some goo on it, then it's not done. We're going to go ahead and take this bread out and check it and see how it's coming along. So here's that bread, and it's starting to look like a bread. And this thing here, it's maybe, I don't know, at its largest dimension, maybe it's 1.5 inches in thickness. And I had poked the knife in here sometime previously, and I poke it in again, I look at the knife, I said, does that look like it's done? And you see that how it's got that kind of a goo look to it. It's not a clean knife. That bread, I say, isn't quite done. Based on my knowledge, I'm just going to check that, because that's what I like to do being a cook. I'm just going to cut into this way. I'm going to just put this in fourths, like this. And then what I'm going to do is say that there's supposed to be 12 portions in this, and I eyeballed that. It's not the best, it's not the worst. But what I want to do then is cut this into halves or thirds. Thirds would be alright. So I'm cutting this more into thirds here so that I get my 12 portions there. Factor 4 times 3 is 12 portions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 portions. And this knife here, as you can see, it's got some goo on it. It's got some other things on it. It might not be quite done, but I'm just going to pull out one of these portions, and then I can see if these are done. So if I pull out a portion and I take a look at it, and as I can see with this, here it is pulled out, and it's hot. And as I can see that particular bread there, this would be said to be kind of a gooey bread. It's not quite done, but it could be eaten if you said that you liked gooey bread. It could be cooked up, to maybe at least 15 more minutes, but just checking it every 5 minutes. And that's what I have this bread. So I'm going to go, I know it isn't quite done, but I do like kind of gooey bread times. And I'm just going to have it. It's more like a cake as it is. It's kind of like a carrot cake. And I'm just going to go ahead and have this bread as it is. It's good enough for me this particular day. And I don't know how long it was in the oven, but it was in enough that was a satisfying amount to myself. And so I'm going to say that my zucchini bread is done for the day. And there it is. I'm going to place it on one plate that's 6 inches in diameter and go ahead and have that zucchini bread to eat. That's this time and culinary things.